everyone, I'm Bridget Coons, owner of Rosette Studios. We're located downtown at 214 South Campbell, over on Campbell and McDaniel, downtown Springfield. We are actually doing a special edition here out in the country with Steve Fielding. He's one of the ceramic artists that we have at Rosette Studios. And instead of doing it at our store downtown, I thought it was really important that we come down to your space because it really makes a difference in what you make on a day-to-day basis. So can you talk a little bit about your background and what landed you here in the country and in this area in general?
Sure. First off, I appreciate Bridget coming out and making her way out to Rogersville where my studio's at. My pottery is called Vessels of Clay, and my name's Steve Fielding. I've been making pottery for approximately a little over 30 years. But I've also been a school teacher. The majority of those years were at Kickapoo High School, but the last few years I've been at Missouri State University working, teaching 2D and 3D design. So this is kind of what I do part-time in terms of working in the studio. My studio is not a big space, but it's very efficient, I guess, for a one-person potter. So in here I have a pug mill and a kiln and a potter's wheel, which I'm hoping to give a little demonstration on here in a little bit. So I'm mainly a functional potter. We kind of use the word utilitarian and things that people can use. A lot in the kitchen, mugs, bowls, pitchers, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I do a little bit. And I love being out in the country. It's a gorgeous place. And my father-in-law, who's 87, lives out here, Jim Berlin, and we kind of look after each other. So
sure.
I look after him, and he gives me a little place to work out in his outbuilding.
Yeah,
so, yep.
Yeah, and it is really nice out here. I feel like you're surrounded by a lot of trees, and nature can really have a large influence. Just driving out here, I felt like I was in a tunnel of trees, so it was a really cool experience. I mean, I know I've been out in the country, but I've never been out this way before, so it was really nice to just drive out here and see what's around you.
Well, it's nice just being, 15 minutes from Springfield, and
sure. But a world away.
But a world away. When you pull in the driveway here, you really feel like you're out in nature, out in the woods, and it's a nice, peaceful place to work and to kind of be creative. So I've really enjoyed that, as opposed to, say, a university setting, which can be a little crazy sometimes.
Right. And can you talk a little bit about that before we sort of move on and look at your studio, about how teaching sort of affects what you do? And you spend a lot of your career teaching students, and how do they influence you, and how do you bring that back to your own personal life?
That's a good question. I think one of the best things about teaching is when you work around young people. As you can see, I'm not a spring chicken myself, and I think it's been seeing the energy that students bring to their work, and the excitement of learning a new craft, like either sculpture or clay work, or it could be a 2D design project, and they're excited about their future. And I think in some ways, I'm still just as excited as I was when I was just starting and I was their age. But I enjoy that, and I enjoy seeing the students, and that's always been a big part of my life. And if you really spend your life teaching, you don't spend as much time working as you do teaching. So to that regard, I've probably, I'm still like a beginner in some ways, but I've been able to work through a few problems in my life that way. But a big influence for me was I had the opportunity to take a sabbatical from Kickapoo for several years, and went and studied at Kansas City Art Institute. And that really influenced me. I was able to work with a lady named Clary Ilian, who was a functional potter, and she just watching her, going into her studio, was really a big part. And I still continue to kind of think of her ideas, and they kind of have turned into my ideas in terms of taking some of the things, but on a much lower standard than hers. But that's part of it. So.
Well, and when I look at your ceramics, is one of the big reasons why I ask about what they influence is because you have a specific lexicon that you work in. You have different things that you do a lot. However, things pop up for you that are unexpected. Like you have the clay marbling, and then you do like the photo transfers, things like that. And just every once in a while you'll have new glazes or things like that. So it feels like a lot of times teachers sort of glean those things off of what students like to try. So it sort of builds their repertoire, and you can use a lot of different things because of that. So every time I see something new from you, I always say, oh, you know, sometimes I know you're coming up with things yourself, but sometimes it's nice just to be in a setting, working with other people, instead of only out here in the country just doing what you do all the time.
That's
over
right.
and over again.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I hope you get a chance to come down to Rosette Arts. I've probably got close to 100 pieces down there, and again, a wide assortment.
Lots. Yeah.
I don't tend to make sets of things, but I might make, you know, 30 mugs, but every one of them just a little different, maybe pushed here, pushed there, a little different glaze, and I think I enjoy that aspect of it. So some people have a specific style, and I've got a feeling my style I've come to accept is that everything is different.
A little eclectic.
So a little eclectic. You might find 6 the same size, but you probably won't find 6 exactly the same. But that's part of my makeup.
But it is really important to do that too, because a handle for one person isn't going to fit another person. So, and the size of one thing isn't going to be the size for someone else. Like I always tell people, when I'm going for coffee, I'm wanting a small mug. When I'm going for tea, I want the biggest mug I can find. So having that range is really important, because you need different mugs for different things.
That's right. I wholeheartly agree. So I do try to change the sizes up a little bit, from small to medium to large, and so hopefully you'll find something at Rosette that you might like. So.
Yes, of course, yeah. So let's look around your studio. We'll take a little bit of time to go around and look at some of the different equipment and how you work on a day-to-day basis.
All right, sounds good.
Great.
Today I wanted to talk just a little bit about the process that I go through in terms of making pottery, and you know, there's a lot of different steps. So not only do I make my own clay, but I make my own glazes. So I thought I might just start here a little bit. A number of these different materials up here are things that you might use in a glaze, some for colorants on pottery, but as I look across there, there's different kinds of ash, like volcanic ash from volcanoes, as you might guess, different kinds of colorants like yellow iron oxide, rutile light, red copper. I have different kinds of materials that I mix in different amounts, measure them out on a gram scale, and work a lot to kind of create my own glazes. I also have large buckets of material outside my studio that I also use that are kind of bigger ingredients, things like flint, calcium carbonate, whiting, ball clay. All of those kinds of things will go into glazes, and many of them go into clays, which brings me to the next step. So this machine right over here, I make my own clay. I've gotten to where I've started making mid-range stoneware, and it opens up in here, and you literally put your ingredients into it. It's like a big dough mixer. Just like if you were making bread, you would add ingredients into this. And I probably put 5 or 6 different ingredients. Things like Hawthorne Bond clay, which is a fire clay around Mexico, Missouri, comes from. Maybe ball clay that comes from Tennessee, Cedar Heights clay, various things, Nefsi. And I'll measure those ingredients, and I'll make about a 25-pound batch of clay. I put it back in here, and again, this is called a pug mill, and I'll just turn this on, and it'll start mixing. It has a paddle gear in there, and as I shut the machine off, I begin to pug this out, and what happens is this starts to extrude through here, and with this clay coming out the end, it doesn't move real fast sometimes, but it mixes all those ingredients. It's much like if you're making biscuits. You might have flour, you might have water, you've got a little baking powder, a little salt, and you mix all those things together, and if you have the right ingredients, you're going to end up with good biscuits. It's kind of the same way with clay. This clay, when I first started this, I had what was called de-aired, and that is getting all the air pockets out of this clay so that it throws more effectively on the potter's wheel. An air bubble can wreak havoc on a mug or a bowl. So I'm going to take a clay wire, cut a little piece of this off, and you can see it's nice and smooth in there, and I'm going to just hope that this doesn't have any air bubbles, and I'm going to pack it into a ball form, and I'm going to take it over to the wheel and kind of show you how it works. So my potter's wheel's over this way. Pottery's a little bit of a messy job. When I first started doing this, I worked at Silver Dollar City in the pottery shop, and I worked with a couple people, a guy named Frank Neef and some people that I learned a lot from down there in terms of making functional pottery. But as you know, if you visited Silver Dollar City, they have all kinds of functional pots there, lots of different styles. But we would work long hour days, but that really kind of added to my education. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape off this little pad of clay. I'm going to rock this into a little point, and I'm going to try to get it stuck down in the center of the wheel. So clay, you want to get this clay moving in the same direction, and all the particles kind of working together. So I'm going to take a little bit of water, put a little water on here. I've got a towel on because it is a little bit of a muddy proposition. So first thing I need to do is center it, and I'm going to grunt and groan here a little bit, especially as an old guy. So this is called centering. If you don't get the clay centered, your pot will be lopsided. I tell my students that it usually takes about 3 days to kind of figure out just this basic centering part, but it can take a lot longer than that to really understand it. Now I've attached the ball of clay to my potter's wheel. I throw on bats, which bats are really nice because you can lift them off the wheel and set them over here once you've created a pot. So I'm trying to get this ball of clay centered, and I've just about got it. It takes a little bit of muscle power. And the next thing that I'm going to do after I've centered it is I'm going to open this, and I'm literally going to take the heel of my hand and start to press down into this. And I want to go down about a ½ inch from the bottom, and I'm going to leave enough clay, which I'm going to show you in a moment. Once the pot's been thrown, you have to dry it to what's called a leather hard stage. And that's a stage where it's not very soft. It's hard enough that you can turn it upside down and trim it and put a foot on it. And a foot is really crucial because it helps to dissipate the heat off of a table, especially like for a functional piece that has, say, a hot food dish in it. So I'm going to start to pull this up now. And this starts to go fairly quickly. So it's really a matter of trying to get both of your hands to work together about the same speed. Once I have the walls brought up a little bit, I'm thinking about this bowl. Do I want this bowl to go out rather broad, or would I like it to go, more into a round bowl? So this one I'm going to kind of spread out a little bit. The first thing I need to do is pottery pieces have different parts, and the very top part is called a lip. And I'm going to just kind of establish a bit of a lip right here. You can probably see that. But it thins it out, but I also want to keep a little bit of a lip on there. And you might have heard me talk about the foot. The foot is on the bottom, and the body of the bowl is the main part. So I'm going to start to pull this up, and it's pretty slow going. I'm really listening to the sound of the wheel as I'm working, which is one nice thing about being out in the country. You can hear that little purr very nicely. I also have a kick wheel out here, which is a nice wheel to work on. You may not be able to see this from where you're at, but I'm more concerned about the inside of this bowl than I am the outside. The outside will take care of itself if I have a nice interior. So I'm going to take a rib, and I imagine they first used animal bones for this, but now, with modern technology, we use plastics or wood. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to establish a nice bowl shape down here. And it also cleans it up. So, if you were to eat Captain Crunch out of here, this would leave a nice smooth surface. So I'm going down. I've still got a little bit of water in there. And then I very slowly clean that out. Take a sponge, pick up the excess water. And then you take a wooden knife, kind of hold it about like a pencil, and you come down here and you clean away enough that you can get an undercut wire to cut this off the wheel head. I save all my scraps. They're actually in a little barrel down under my wheel, and then I use that the mistakes or the little extra scraps that come off the pottery piece. I can add those back into the clay, and that really works well. So you have kind of dry ingredients, and instead of just using straight water, you can use your scrap clay. So it's nice that you can use this all up. The next thing that I'll do is I'm going to take a very smooth cloth and smooth the top edge of this bowl out. Then I'm going to take a metal rib, flexible metal, and I'm going to come back in. I'm going to clean this off nice and smooth, re-emphasize that rim. And the next thing I want to do is I want to think, like, as you can kind of see, some of these have been pushed in. Some of them have different kinds of clay that have been put onto them. Some of them squared up. And I'm going to just do something to this thing that will maybe be a little different. I can see most of those are all like just a little different sizes, a little different shape, but I think that day I was kind of pushing like little parts into them, and I think I'll probably do that today. So I'm going to square this up, pinch it a little bit, and really for me this is the fun part. Whoops. Each time that you do something, the artist touches the clay, kind of puts a little bit of your own personality, your own little mark into it. You know, normally I put the marks on the outside of the bowl, but this time, and I haven't done this for a while, but I'm thinking I might just put the marks on the inside and see how that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and spin this out. So I can't tell exactly what that's doing on the outside, but it created a bit of a spiral on the inside. So once I've got that done, I think I'll just maybe pull little lines up to the little pinch marks. As you can see, this is not a real exact science, but as you've done this a few times, you have a little bit of an idea of where this is going and how much clay you need to kind of finish this out. So once that's done, I can take that off and you can kind of see down in there and you can kind of see the shape of this. But the next step I'm going to do is I have one drying outside, and I thought I might just take this bowl because the one that's drying outside I can turn upside down and trim a foot on it. And I'll show you what a foot looks like here in just a minute. So I've finished throwing a bowl, and I kind of showed you a little bit of the process of that. Once you make the bowl, you usually let it set for a few hours just so that it can dry out so that it gets fairly sturdy. And this bowl is easy to touch. It's starting to dry, but it's not completely dry. It's not like, I guess you'd say, a dirt clod. It's still got a little moisture in it. And I've centered this on the wheel. Again, some of these bowls that I distort, which I distort almost all of them, sometimes they're just a little off when you start centering. So we'll kind of see how this progresses. I'm using a trimming tool, and I'm kind of holding my finger in the middle, and I'm starting to take some of this material off. And if it peels off in ribbons like this, it's just perfect for this kind of work. And this is also much like working on a wood lathe. For those of you that have done that kind of work, you're taking material and you're trimming it off. I have to think about how much material is left under this bowl, what the shape of the bowl is like on the inside, and I'm kind of thinking about this foot kind of going like this. So I'm going to start into this. And I like throwing pots, I like making bowls, but you know what? This part right here is a lot of fun. Because it just creates a little more of the design. So I've started to establish the foot. It also takes weight off of this, so that this bowl, if you're making a bowl that you're sitting at the dinner table using, you want a bowl that you can pick up and pass with the food in it without, you know, being too heavy. So the next thing I'm going to start is on this foot. And I know I have about a ½ inch here, or I'm hoping that I do. And once I have this trim, I'll hold it up and let you take a peek at it. When students first start working on this, they go right through the bowl many times, and it's you know, they finally get a beautiful looking bowl made, and they cut right through the bottom of it. But if you come in the shop and you look around and you pick up a bowl that I've made, you'll see the foot ring on many of them. There's a few that do not have a foot ring. They're just flat bottom bowls, but many of them will have this ring. have to pay a certain amount of attention to what you're doing, or you'll go right through it. So I'm using very light pressure on this. This trimming tool, a ceramic professor at MSU, Keith Extam, brought this back from China for me. I love it. We used to use what were called loop tools, and I still occasionally use those, but this works great. It's also nice, in this little foot ring, you can put different designs, you can glaze it different ways. And it's always kind of fun to pick up different ceramic artists' bowls and just look at the foot and see what they look like. Because the attention to detail on that is just an extra little step that really adds to the beauty of the bowl. I'm getting close, but I'm trying to get off that last little bit. About it. So you undo the little clay lugs, tap it, and you might want to just smooth that little rim a little bit. And I've stamped a little design onto this one, and there's the foot ring, and you can kind of see that, but that looks like that would be a pretty nice little bowl. So these are ones that are bone dry, and they've already been trimmed. I sign my name in there a lot of times after they dry a little bit. Once they've gone to this bone dry stage, generally from the time that you throw the bowl until it actually comes out of the kiln, which I'm going to take you to the kiln. So this is my pottery kiln. It actually operates on a computer. Technology is really a nice thing. So I can set this computer to go up to raise in temperature a certain amount of degrees, say 150 degrees an hour, until it reaches, say, 2200 degrees. So cone 6 temperatures. Right in this kiln, I have a number of different kinds of mugs that are getting ready to come out of here, and some bigger pieces. And these took up quite a bit of room in the kiln. So some pitcher forms that I'm working on. And again, I've got some pitchers in Rosette Studios that I think are pretty nice. And then also some utility holders, and I have different kinds of handles, and those handles go on much like you're making a mug. So the next step for these pieces is they're going to be put into glazes, and you can't see these from here, but the different pickle buckets that I have out here have different kinds of glazes in them. So they're a liquid kind of material, almost looks like a medium milkshake, if you will, and you'll dip those pots into it, or you spray them with a spray gun. So that's kind of the process, and then once that's done, and it's been fired, you can see here's a bowl that I pinched that has kind of a little bit of a baby blue glaze on it. Sometimes I will do a pottery piece without a lot of decoration on it, just so that you can see the form of the bowl. I know a lot of people like kind of flashy things and different kinds of designs, but the pieces of like the foods that you would serve in this might show off better if there was just strictly kind of a plain color, even a white or something. I love that. So just so that you can actually see the design and the beauty of the bowl itself. So that's the process of making pottery. So one of the nice things about being out in the woods is firing a wood kiln. And so this is a fun process that after the pieces come out of the bisque kiln, like the pictures that I was showing you earlier in the video, I would glaze those up, put them in here, and I've cut a lot of wood kind of from around the surrounding area. And also a buddy of mine, Kyle Mormon, who's builds a lot of wood for Bass Pro Shop, gives me his scrap oak, and I use this to stoke my kiln with. So it's got a counterweighted like cover on it, and this kiln will go up to about 2400 degrees in about 4 hours. So I'm literally down on my knees when I start stoking this kiln, and fire is kind of belching out of all the different areas on it when it's going. And you have to kind of watch your head around this place, because everything I made pretty much out of recycled parts. I found this wood just along the back of the property, and I used it. A lot of the bricks that were used in this were old kilns that I took apart. So I built this whole contraption for about $300. So it's not a real expensive endeavor. It doesn't make a lot of pots, but the beauty that you get from a wood-fired pot, where the wood ash that flows through the kiln lands on the pottery pieces and can create some really beautiful pieces. They're rather rustic. There are a few wood-fired pieces in Rosette art, so if you would like to see those, Bridget, I'm sure, would be happy to show those to you. So I've got a few of those pieces in there. And but again, it's been made out of recycled. You notice this little noodle that little kids would use in the swimming pool? I've got that on there to keep me from hitting my head on that. You know, not too smart some days. But this is a lot of fun, and I can stoke this kiln by myself. And again, in about 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, I can have this up to stoneware and porcelain temperatures and end up with some beautiful pottery. And I unload it the next night, so that's a real benefit of that. So, but again, you can kind of see the wood piles, and it's just nice being outside, you know, where it's kind of like a little barbecue smell all day long. So that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you all so much for watching this video, watching Steve Fielding give us a little bit of demonstration about what he does and what you can expect to find when you come into the store. I really want to thank you for inviting us into your studio, not only me, but everyone, to see how you work and what you do. I really appreciate that. Do you want to say anything else about your work and what it means to you and the area itself?
Again, it's been my pleasure to have Bridget come out, and I appreciate Rosette Arts through the years kind of giving me the opportunity to have a place to market my work, and the people that have come in and picked up a few pieces through the years. So it's been good. I really, again, love where I'm at out in this situation. It's more of a working studio than a studio that people can come and visit, but it's kind of home to me, and it's been a great place of peace, I guess, for my own life. And I've been able to have different kinds of people come out and work a little bit on the wheel from time to time, and that's been fun too. So I don't have much else to add, but make sure you come in the shop. A lot of good stuff, a lot of other good potters as well, and you know, everything from laser cuts to buttons to a lot of good stuff in there besides, you know, pottery. So you need to pop in, and especially on Friday art walks. Those are great times to come in.
So like Steve was saying, we have First Friday art walks on the first Friday of every month. On that day, our front gallery changes completely. So we have somebody new featured every month. So it's a nice way to keep our store fresh. And a lot of our artists as well put new work in right before that time. So it is a little bit new to see every single time. And so if you want to come down and get some of Steve's work or see the other things we have to offer, we are at 214 South Campbell in downtown Springfield. If you want to just call and ask any questions, we have our number at 417-987-9155. You're welcome to call that number, or email me at info@rosettestudios, ROSETTESTUDIOS.com. Or you can go to our website, rosettestudios.com, and see some of the stuff there that we have to offer. So thank you so much again. Thank you, Steve. This has been a really great time at your space
my pleasure.
today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll see you all soon at the store.